Right, it won't go back, so I'm a senior PPC analyst at Journey Further. Been with the agency for just short of 5 years now. A little bit unusually for a PPCer. Before that, I worked entirely client-side. Kind of fell into online marketing by accident about 12 years ago when my previous job disappeared, and no one really seemed to suss it out, so I'm sort of still here. To tell you a little bit about Journey Further without going kind of full sales pitch mode. Journey Further was really born out of, I guess, opportunity and frustration with the way certain things in the industry happened. The founders felt that there was a better way of doing business. That sort of became clarity at speed, which is our philosophy, which sounds a little bit wanky, but what it really boils down to is genuine transparency and integrity in how we do things, but also direct contact between analysts and clients. So if I'm your PPC analyst, you're speaking to me on a weekly basis, I'm making the changes, there's no layers of client services. That sort of slows the process down, it speeds things up, which is where the speed and clarity at speed comes from, and it leads to much better performance. And what that's done is it's enabled them to go from the 3 founders in what was basically a glorified corridor in Leeds 8 years ago to 200 specialists now kind of working across a multitude of disciplines based in Leeds, London, New York, and of course Manchester. So I'm going to talk today about how we transform Boots Hearingcare's PPC performance, and we did that by using a real innovative data strategy, but we built that based on real solid PPC fundamentals. So as automation's got more and more common and granular control starts to become a thing of the past, innovative uses of first-party data have really become a crucial way of elevating performance. So it's a lot harder to separate yourself from the pack if everyone's using the same tools. But innovation really needs to be built on 2 pillars if it's going to be successful. The first is a well-structured PPC account with excellent fundamentals. And the second... The second is strong knowledge of clients' objectives and what they want to get out of the business, because ultimately it's no good trying to do something fancy if it's not serving clients' need. What we found a lot over the last 12 or 18 months in the accounts that we've audited and the accounts that we've onboarded is that a lot of accounts aren't getting the fundamentals right, and fundamentally when that happens, trying to build a fancy solution on top of that is like building your house on sand. It's going to fail, it can't achieve its full potential, and ultimately it's not going to last. So the key question is, why is that happening? First and foremost, the answer is change. So change is pretty much the only constant in PPC. It's frankly something that I really like about the industry, that it doesn't stay the same for that long. But over the last couple of years, we've seen a really, really seismic shift in how accounts are set up and run. And that's frankly created quite a big challenge. As I mentioned before, granular structures, really, really hyper-detailed, extensive structures are becoming a thing of the past. And more we're seeing that consolidated structures that really harness the power of AI and allow smart bidding to do its best work are typically performing a lot better. What we found in a lot of the accounts that we've taken on that have these problems isn't a lack of adoption, they're not clinging onto granular structures. It's almost that they're going too enthusiastically into consolidation. The idea is right, but the execution is what's letting it down. So I'm going to talk about a few of the things that we've encountered that are the most impactful and the most commonly occurring. And I don't want this to sound judgmental, or I don't want you to think, oh, I'm so clever. I've fallen foul of a bunch of these things in the past, I've learned from them, and frankly I'm really lucky. Working with the PPC team that we have, it's an excellent team of genuinely brilliant people, and Mark, that really push the boundaries and are keen to test new things, but more importantly, very, very open about sharing those learnings. So it enables you to learn and develop at a hell of a speed, because people aren't keeping things to themselves. If something works, we share that. So if you're having a challenge with a client, you can kind of think, all right, well maybe that'll work, and it speeds the whole process up. So I don't want you to think this is me just ranting and being really superior. Hopefully this will help. So far and away the biggest problem that we've seen, as I alluded to a minute ago, is over-consolidation. people just going all in on consolidation. And what we've seen in a few really extreme examples is that just means whacking pretty much every relevant term you've got on broad match in one ad group and hoping for the best, and doesn't tend to work that well. This is an extreme example, but this graph shows the improvement in ad relevance that we're able to generate for a client that I onboarded about 8 months ago, just with better segmentation. The spend per ad relevance increased enormously, their efficiency increased enormously. What we see is that there's often no thematic link, so broad match is, in my experience, generally pretty good at not picking up out and out irrelevant terms anymore. Like in the past it used to be horrifying for it, but it's not great at separating out subtle differences. So, for example, if you, like I have a client who is a chain of dentists. If you're serving, like if someone's searching for an ad for dental hygienist and you're serving them ads for veneers or kind of emergency dentistry, that kind of thing, we've seen a lot of examples of that where it's just completely the wrong intent. And we've got parts of the account that want to serve that, but it's appearing in completely the wrong place. So consolidation is a good thing, but there needs to be logic and thought to it. So as a rough rule of thumb, what we tend to use is the logic of splitting campaigns based on where you need to change bid strategy or budget, and splitting your ad groups where you want to change the landing page or the ad copy. If there's no discernible difference, keep stuff together. Where you want to separate, use that as your guide. And generally speaking, it should work really well. Tied into this is a lack of negative keyword implementation. Now, the dream that Google sort of tried to sell when they really pushed consolidated structures and the reintroduction of unmodified broad was that it would simplify account management. Similar to smart bidding, it would free up time to spend on big picture thinking, and SQLs would be a thing of the past. We wouldn't have to worry about any of that. The reality of it, though, like I mentioned a minute ago, is that terms are capable of matching to a huge array of keywords. Again, not out and out irrelevant, but not right for what you're trying to achieve with that ad group. This diagram on the side is my attempt to hypnotize you, although, like, if you suddenly had the urge to transfer your life savings to me, not going to complain. What it is an example that I found of the same high volume term matching to over 170 different keywords in the same account, and that is literally 170 different spokes to show you how horrifying that is. Like, smart bidding just can't possibly do a good job if data's that fragmented. So what we need to do is not spend time building hyper-granular keyword lists and thinking of every possible kind of spelling, misspelling, plural even, that they're a thing of the past. But we do need to spend time building out much more extensive negative keyword lists. Not to filter out completely irrelevant stuff, although if that's there, yeah, get rid of it. But it's more to channel terms to the most appropriate part of the account so that they're landing in the best possible place. It'll boost your relevance. More importantly than that, it will give the searcher confidence that you can solve the problem they have. There's a bit of a bonus here. Depending on the complexity of the account, building those kind of negative keyword lists can be a pretty horrific job, but you've got a good, consistent naming convention in your ad group structure. You can use that to your advantage, and ChatGPT can do a hell of a lot of the legwork. Obviously validate it and make sure it hasn't done anything stupid, but it's sped up my processes immensely doing this and saved me a lot of mind-numbing time, because let's be honest, building negative keyword lists, not the most fun we can have. This is another big one, and it's such an easy one to solve. We see a lot where brand terms are leaking into generic keywords. It completely distorts performance, because obviously then generic looks more efficient than it actually is. Smart bidding can't understand and can't be expected to understand that there's not an endless pot of brand search, and frankly it's not that incremental, so you want to be spending as little as possible to get as much as possible. And again, real simple solution, just apply your brand terms as negative keywords across all of your generic campaigns. You share lists if you want, apply across all, doesn't really matter, do it. This is a real good example where we improved performance significantly for a client on generic performance just by giving smart bidding an accurate idea of what it was actually bidding to. We were able to generate more clicks with less spend because CPC came down dramatically when it realised what the genuine value of that traffic was. This is a much less simple one, but it's utterly crucial. So we often see where either bid strategies applied uniformly across an account and different campaigns have different objectives. So if that's the case, sensibly they should probably have different bid strategies, or at the very least different targets. There's often not a lot of thought goes into it. The example there is very extreme, frankly. Like if you put your target impression share on generics, you're a braver man than I am. But we see a lot of examples, even on brand, where people are testing smart bidding and it could be getting decent results, like it could be hitting its target. But this is an example where we took it over. Competition was absolutely minimal, the CPCs were pretty high, so tester moving it onto manual CPC, slash the bids. As you can see there, spend comes down by about 2/3, clicks stay exactly the same. The saving that made on a monthly basis basically paid more than that monthly fee that we were charging the client. So the first week of working for them, we were essentially paying for ourselves, and everything on top of that is a bonus. And if you look, this is an extreme example, but if you're lucky enough to find one of these, it's a very easy way of looking like a hero by doing very little. This is one that probably makes Scott, our head of PPC, most angry, and he's covering, so he doesn't really need to be any angrier. But losing impression share to budget, again, is another very quick win, and it's an easy one to avoid. You can make your budget work much harder by getting that balance right. The ideal scenario is, if something's working well, you can increase your budget so you can put more spend through it. That's an ideal world. We don't always have endless budgets to play with. If that's the case, just keep walking down your bid strategy and making it less aggressive until you've got the loss impression share to budget down to minimal. And again, this is an example where, on a client that we onboarded recently, it's just been bubbling away at about 20-30% for ages, and that's money that could be spent much more effectively. Like, you're just running out of money before you run out of day. Such an easy one to fix. Last, but probably the most underrated out of all of this, is making full use of your RSAs. So for consolidation to really work, you need all of consolidation, obviously. You need smart bidding, you need RSAs, and you need broad matching in place, theoretically, for those to work as strongly as they can. What I've seen quite a lot of is that RSAs are probably the more neglected part of that kind of that three-way mix, and it has a really big impact on harming performance. It's overlooked, but it has a big impact. So this example, Ben aside, again, relatively extreme, but we brought on a client about 7 months ago. They were in the middle of running a promotion, so we'd obviously already talked them through, like, we're going to restructure the account, we're going to do all sorts of good stuff. But they said to us, look, we've got this promotion running, it's not quite working as well as we would like. Is there anything you can do in the short term just to give it a bit of boost? So I had a look, and what I found was that every ad group had 3 RSAs in it. So for a start, that's a bit of a concern because none of them had a real key difference in theme between them, so there's not really a reason to be splitting that performance 3 ways. And there was no differentiation in the messaging, so there's no benefit there. What really scared me was that each of them had 3 headlines and 2 descriptions. Like, they were essentially ETAs, and we stopped using ETAs years ago. So you're not getting anywhere close to allowing them to do their job properly. So, very quick job, all we did was consolidate them together. We put a wider array of assets in there related to the promotion, which, helped. And we saw an immediate impact. Like, CPCs came straight down, click-through rate went straight up, and again, we were just making that budget work harder. It was just such a good, easy, quick win. Like I said, it's an extreme example, but with the move to broad match, we really need to think more about how we use RSAs, because you're trying to match a greater range of queries to one ad group. You need a greater range, and an appropriate range, more importantly, of assets in there to do so. So I've ranted for probably 10 minutes now, and I said I wasn't going to get judgmental. So let's talk more positively, and let's talk about what we did, how we used a lot of these different things to improve Boots Hearingcare's performance and really drive it forward over the last year. So Boots came to us with a challenge. They needed to increase the web bookings, but they had to improve efficiency as well, which is a challenge I'm sure a lot of people in this room have faced. There's not an endless pot of money just to throw at a problem. We needed to do both. They'd found in the past that trying to scale PPC through their old agency hadn't really worked, and they weren't that confident that they knew which parts of the account were generating value, so therefore couldn't really scale with any kind of certainty. That's ruined my transition. Really thought I got past that. On top of all that, they felt that their in-store appointment availability was my fault. Right, I'll show you. So on top of that, they felt that appointment availability was impacting the conversion rate because different stores had dramatically different availability, but they didn't have the data to be able to prove that out. They were fairly certain, but ultimately without data, who knows? So at this point, I want to call back to what I talked about earlier, those two key pillars. You need a well-structured PPC account, and you need strong knowledge of the client's business and their objectives. So to be able to deliver this at speed, we kind of divided and conquered and ran a lot of this in parallel. So we set to work restructuring the PPC account, getting all those basics and fundamentals right to improve their visibility and performance without doing anything else. At the same time, a team from across the agency set to work on developing a location-based business strategy. So I'm not going to dwell too long on the basics that we did because I've already talked about a lot of it, but the crucial things to really take away, and the biggest, most impactful changes, was that we segmented brand and generic properly. It was a huge problem for them. It was just vastly inflating their generic spend and just not getting the data that they needed at all. We segmented the generics better because, again, the different terms that they had were bleeding into each other, not wildly relevant, but not helpful either in terms of understanding where value's coming from. And that really enabled us to be able to improve the RSAs quite easily, to improve the relevance, but also to expand out the reach of the account because there were quite a few missed opportunities. So the table at the side kind of demonstrates how we've done that. So we've halved the number of campaigns, but dramatically increased the number of ad groups and the number of keywords to be able to increase reach. I'm hoping the number of keywords isn't an omen, but we'll see. So on to the really interesting stuff. We set about developing the location bidding strategy at the same time, like I said. First we had to figure out what the factors were that were impacting conversion rates. We showed that. Thank you. Right.
Hey!
We're back in the room. Stop chatting. Oh, for the love of God, no. So we looked at time of week. We looked at distance to the nearest competitor store because we thought both of those would have an impact. What we found was that actually there wasn't a tangible impact on conversion rate when we looked at that. So that led us to really focus on appointment availability. And what we found, so to get to that data wasn't necessarily easy, Boots didn't have it before. We were able to scrape their booking site, scrape the booking system, essentially from the site. So this was a big bonus and big help for us because it required no dev work on their end, because frankly I've never met a dev that doesn't have 4 times the amount of work that they have time in the day. So that sped up the process tremendously, but it also gave us real-time information, so we could study that, monitor it. Our data scientists ran it through predictive analysis, and what the model showed was that there was a really, really clear correlation between the time to the next appointment and conversion rate, which feels logical, but ultimately without the data you can't prove it out. So we then went and modeled that data on tested the model on a lot of historical data to make sure it was accurate. We didn't want to kind of run off down completely the wrong path, but that reassured us. So as well as developing that data as well, storing it, understanding it, we needed to provide insights for Boots because, like I said, when we started working with them, they didn't have a lot of that data. They kind of wanted that insight, understandably so. So what we did was develop an interactive map for real-time inventory tracking. Now, obviously, this is based on dummy data, but it very easily enables you to identify problem areas. It gives them a really easy reference. And we're sending that through. Well, frankly, they've got it real time because we combined it with a dashboard that updates automatically, but we also send through emails to key stakeholders on a daily basis with it, so that they've got that information as and when they want it. It's nice and low maintenance, it's very impactful. And what it enabled them to do was to start having business-wide conversations, like with the retail team, for example, so addressing those pain points and saying, okay, well, Elgin, for example, looks like it's struggling, and I'm guessing maybe the one or the all existing Elgin moved out. But it enables them to dig into that and understand why it's a problem, because obviously it's one thing to quantify for PPC, but it's much, much more impactful to be able to take that back to the full business and help solve those business-wide challenges and get out of just that PPC mentality. So we had the data, we needed to do something with it because we knew that it impacted conversion rate. How do we make practical use of that? We used Google Ads API integration, and that enabled us to dynamically adjust conversion values, so we can flex those up and down at postcode level on a daily basis automatically. So it's really low touch, it's streamlined, doesn't involve silly amounts of work because, sorry, it's not loud yet. Sorry. Thought you got away with that. So yeah, works on a real automated basis. To make sure we properly understood the impact of it, we ran a Google Ads experiment for a number of months to be able to really robustly quantify it and understand what the impact of all of those changes were. Which is the million-dollar question, what's the impact? And not to spoil it, but I'm still here talking about it, so it's going to be good. So overall, there was a 31% increase in bookings. There was a 20% decrease in cost per booking, and again, that was crucial, that we couldn't just throw more money at it, we had to improve efficiency as well, which we did. As importantly though, as I touched upon, it gives us the ability to flex spend based on capacity. So where booths need those appointments to be, we increase spend. And what that means is that the 31% increase in bookings is a 31% increase in desired bookings. So again, we're optimizing towards the business's specific objectives. We're not just grabbing loads of low-hanging fruit and saying, oh look, I'm really great, I've got loads of bookings, if they were going to get those anyway. And last but by no means least, like I touched upon, it really significantly increased the visibility and insight, and even recently that's helped us solve a number of problems. Efficiency's been a challenge for a little while, but we've been able to show that that's based on the external factors, that overall wait times as a business on average are creeping up, and that has a real direct impact on conversion rate, so it just contextualizes stuff, and again, anytime you can do that as a PPC is great because it stops you getting beaten around the head, and we have enough stress as it is. I had hair when I started working in PPC. Not saying there's a correlation, but you know. So to summarise, if I can leave you with one last thought, to truly elevate PPC performance, first nail the fundamentals, and then build innovative solutions based on your client objectives on top of that to amplify performance. Thank you.